Thanks for joining us for this webinar. My name is Roy Bethke. I'm an instructor for Louisiana State University's National Center for Biomedical Research and Training. Our team at NCBRT has been talking about this COVID-19 outbreak and really the impact on training and officer wellness as we navigate these very difficult and uncharted times. What is it going to mean for our responder communities? So we just wanted to spend a little bit of time giving you some thoughts and ideas and really having a conversation around responder wellness as we move forward. The first part, I think, needs to be understanding that we've experienced these types of pandemics before, not to this scale, certainly, and not the way that we're responding to it generally, but moving all the way back to 1918, we've seen some media, correlation and comparison between the Spanish flu. That outbreak in 1918 also provides a really good case study on the idea of social distancing and the impact that it can have. Two small cities that actually, one practiced social distancing and one didn't, had a significant change in the impact and the outcome of fatalities and people's illness. So that's something for us to keep in mind. Then if we move from 1918 to 1957, we had a significant outbreak in the United States of an Asian flu. 1968, there was a Hong Kong influenza. 1976, we had the first Ebola outbreak in Zaire and a swine flu outbreak actually in the United States. And then moving a little bit closer to now, in 2003, the U.S. dealt with SARS. Really, the world dealt with SARS. The U.S. had some SARS as well. Dealt with first monkeypox outbreak in 2003 in the U.S. From 2003 to 2008, we had a pretty significant outbreak worldwide of the avian flu, something that those of us that were in the responder community at the time spent some time planning for and talking about what could be, and thankfully never turned out as bad as we had thought it might. In 2009, we had H1N1. In 2012, we had the MERS mutant coronavirus. 2013, we had a novel avian flu strain, so similar to this coronavirus outbreak, novel in that it's new. We haven't seen that specific strain before. And then in 2014, we had a pretty substantial outbreak of Ebola. I think it's important for those listening to this webinar to know that that 2014 outbreak, NCBRT, our organization, was deeply involved in training responders around the world for how to best contain that outbreak and take care of themselves, the proper care of PPE and how to put it on, how to take it off, and try to minimize the exposure risk to them. So as we talk about really the impact on the world and the impact on the United States and the impact on responders, I think it's important that we draw some comparisons to 9/11. I mean, for my generation, the one that was really entrenched in the battle of 9/11 and understanding what responders were going through, 9/11 was a little bit different, actually significantly different, right, from the events that we're currently seeing. It was something that it was an attack just on our country. It brought our country together. It unified us as a front for how we dealt with that situation. The reality is, for the first responders, the vast majority of our major issues, unless you were in New York or you were in Pennsylvania or you were in D.C., handling the actual operations, the rest of the country wasn't as impacted other than emotionally and ultimately financially. That's about where the comparison to this particular outbreak of COVID-19 ends, right? This has been a much slower, much more drawn out series of events already. Certainly, we're seeing some unification of our country, but unlike 9/11, this truly has impacted the entire world. We keep seeing all these different maps and all these different projections, and it really is a worldwide problem for us to face. And wow, when we think about that, we think about what are the things that we're most concerned about? What creates or causes anxiety for us as responders? And I think it's important that we acknowledge that anxiety and fear and uncertainty are real emotions, and it's okay for us to have them. So what I'd really like to do is start with a kind of an exercise. I'd like you to take just a moment, take about 30 seconds. I'd like you to write down the three things, two or three things really, that you're most anxious, most concerned about, have the most fear around. And just write those down, and we'll come back in about 30 seconds, and let's talk through some of those. All right, so take a look at that list that you made for just a second. I asked the same question on social media for some friends and reached out to some of our instructors and asked that same question of them. So, what are the things about dealing with this coronavirus outbreak that really create the most anxiety, the most fear for you, the most concern moving forward? And I'm curious how much comparison there is to the list that you created from what I'm seeing in the responses on social media and from our own instructors. First, really, is the idea of getting sick yourself or getting family members sick. This is a different battle. When we made that comparison to 9/11, we, generally speaking, there was an enemy, a person or people that we were fighting. And that's really what the mentality of responders is, right? We're dealing with a thing that is relatively known. Sometimes it's uncertain. Sometimes we're not completely clear, but it's not invisible. This virus is invisible, and the idea that you could go into some place and be exposed to it, have it on you or on your clothes, or be carrying it for some period of time and be contagious and not even know it is definitely something that's causing some concern and some anxiety for many of us, me included. Ultimately, this idea of managing really day to day life as a first responder, unlike much of the country that at this point is under stay at home orders or social distancing directives, the reality is that first responders of all different disciplines are on the front line fighting this virus and this pandemic as it continues to spread. At the same time, many of our young people are at home doing e-learning. Our spouses or significant others' calendar schedule has changed dramatically, yet we're still having to go to work. And there's a concern from childcare to how relationships are going to play out and how to manage those day-to-day changes that we've had to face. And those are real issues for a lot of us. Certainly, the economy was in a conversation, many of the conversations, many of the comments on social media, the complete economic uncertainty. We've got restaurants and businesses completely shut down. And, those of us who remember all too well the economic impact of the 2008 banking crisis and the financial meltdown. And now we have major economists talking about what is a recession going to look like coming out of this coronavirus outbreak, and is there a potential for a depression? Those are major concerns for responders, really for everybody, but for first responders as well. And then more comments about, what is normal going to look like moving forward? When are we going to return to normal, if there ever is such a thing? And I know that as we record this, there's already been some extensions of some of these stay-at-home orders. So there really is a lot of uncertainty around that. And then one of the concerns that was repeatedly mentioned was this issue with irrational people. I don't know about any of you, but for me, the couple times that I went to the grocery store as this pandemic lockdown was evident, this hoarding of toilet paper is fascinating. It's hard to believe how irrational people have become and their need to hoard toilet paper or participate in behaviors that are really all about them and not thinking clearly about how we help each other and care for one another as human beings. We also need to be thinking about what's the impact long term going to be related to post traumatic stress, the divorce rate, the alcoholism rate, the suicide rate as it pertains to first responders. All those things are already problems in the first responder community. The amount of stress that we're about to be under and continue to be under for some period of time while we deal with all the other fears and anxieties and changes are really something for us to pay attention to. And then also commented on quite a bit was just a lack of control. I think most first responders would agree that we're control people. We like to have some control over what we're doing, where we're going, how we're spending our time. And suddenly we have a complete lack of control, and we're kind of in that response mode where we're completely reactive to how we manage these problems. But there certainly are some things that we can do to improve our odds of coming out the other side of this successful and keeping ourselves, for the most part, less likely to be ill and sick. So I want to spend some time talking about that in just a moment. So first, I think it's important that we understand that any of those things that you're feeling, any of the emotions related to the things that we talked about, the anxieties, the fears, the uncertainty, it's okay to have those feelings. When I talk to friends who were on the front lines during 9/11, who have spent time overseas at war, who have gone through significant life events, one of the things they continue to repeat back to me is that we have to be okay understanding that those emotions, these emotions that we're feeling or having, they're completely normal. There's nothing wrong with you. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to have fear. And we need to acknowledge as responders, we're not bulletproof. We're not superhuman. We are all human beings and we're impacted by the things that go on around us. So that's important for us to remember. So, what kind of techniques, what things might we do to better help ourselves manage through some of these issues that we're facing or this anxiety that we're facing? I know for me, as I transition to working from home a lot more, one of the things I tend to do is get really deeply involved in my work and spend more time on the computer and more time isolated and really not thinking about being in the moment. So, the first recommendation that we have is breathe. You really just need to stop and breathe for just a moment and make sure that you're actually feeling those breaths. I also need to schedule breaks. If I get on a streak and just start working, I end up being sitting at my desk or someplace for 2 hours straight and don't even notice that the time went by because I'm talking to people, I'm doing things. I think it's unhealthy. I think, we're used to being up, moving around, doing something. So we need to schedule breaks for ourselves. Get up and walk around, even if it's just walk around your kitchen, walk around your house someplace. Really important to get up and walk. If you're someplace in the country where the weather's nice enough, spring is starting to come and you can go outside, that's even better. How about the idea of being mindful? Mindfulness is an important topic, I think, generally speaking, but certainly more important now, right? We need to think about being in the moment. How are we best in the moment? That idea of that breathing, being in the moment, becomes really important because the only thing that we control is right now. This is the very moment in time that you have control over. You don't have control over the past or things that may have gone wrong in your planning or in your preparation or in the country's planning or preparation. You don't control any of those things. Those things are in the past and you have to leave them there. You also don't have a whole lot of control over the future. You certainly can make some plans and have some ideas what you're going to do for the future, but the only thing that you totally control is this moment. And that's that idea of mindfulness. Be in the moment. Realize that you can control this moment. You can control your attitude. You can control how you feel. You can control what you're doing to a certain extent, and you should try to do that. The other part that we've been talking to experts about is this idea of creating a routine. For first responders, the reality is that one of the reasons many of us chose this profession is that the job was unpredictable and it was exciting and we got to do something different all the time. So routines can be a little bit of an odd conversation for us to have, but we need, to the best of our ability, to create some routines, even if they're new routines. For me, my really routine when I wasn't on the road teaching for NCBRT was get up in the morning, go exercise, come back, make a healthy breakfast, do all sorts of stuff around the house during the day, and wait for my wife and kids to come home from school, and then have, family dinner, that type of event. Little different routine when I was on the road. What we're seeing now as we talk to those of us that are still either first responders or trainers or still in the space is that routine is completely broken, and we're a little bit lost as to what the structure of a day looks like. And then add to that the layers that your spouse, significant other, your kids might be home as well. It's important that we figure out what a routine is going into each day and kind of have a plan for how to get through the day successfully. And that includes scheduling things like breaks and walks that we talked about, just making sure you make some time for yourself. Exercise is really, really important. Even if that's something that you don't normally do, I would encourage you to think about the role that exercise plays in not just our physical health, but certainly in our emotional health as well. So again, get out and walk, do something for yourself just to create some space and to help you be as healthy as you can be. An important part of that conversation, though, is if you're not a runner, this probably isn't the time to sign up for a 5K or do some kind of virtual 5K race and get out there and do something extreme. The last thing you want to do is really hurt yourself and really make the situation even more challenging for you personally. So be incremental and make sure you're wise about going out and getting some exercise. This idea of having a plan is good. Realize that the plan isn't going to always go exactly the way that you think it's going to go. And I think the conversation needs to be, we need to learn how to be compassionate. We need to learn how to be more compassionate. If you're already compassionate, be even more compassionate. You think about people around you, the other responders, your neighbors, your family, your friends. You have no idea what they're going through, what they're feeling. Just because you are feeling a specific emotion or you're feeling one way about something doesn't mean that they are as well. So we need to make sure that we spend some time and remember that we need to be compassionate for them, so that we can be as helpful. And some of it's active listening, right? Maybe we can't be face to face with somebody. We need to stay 6 feet apart from people. That doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't be connected. I actually think connection's even more important and is something that we need to be even more intentional about. For those that sometimes criticize the millennial generation, think about the influence that texting and being online and being more social in that connected space has for them. Maybe they'll come out of this better than us Gen Xers, which is my generation, or even baby boomers, where we tend to thrive more on face to face personal interaction. All of us need to figure out different ways to connect and communicate, because that connection to others and to family is absolutely vital for how we process and how we get through these really challenging times. I would also encourage those of you who are still active as first responders to connect with retirees. And you think about the feeling and the emotion of being a retiree and not being active anymore. We joke that all first responders are former action folks that are used to being in the fight. And when these types of events happened, they were the ones who raised their right hand, swore an oath to protect and serve. Many of them can't do that anymore because they're not active or because they're not healthy enough to do that or don't have the connection to be able to do that. What a great resource if those of us still working as responders can reach out to those retirees and provide some emotional support to them and thank them for their service to this country. It's also important, I think, from a reverse mentoring type relationship as well. Many of them have dealt with pretty significant issues. Again, maybe nothing as exact as this COVID-19 outbreak, but there's probably a lot that they know and understand from making it successfully through a career that they can share with you, and some support that they can provide you. So those connections in that relationship are really important. I would also encourage you to think about and figure out ways to say no. Yes is really, really easy. And as we sit at home and we have a little bit more time on our hands, some things will start to pop up and creep into our schedules, and it's really easy to say yes. But for your own health, you need to manage your routine, you need to manage your schedule, and there are going to be some things that you want to say no to, and make some space for yourself. Another thing from health and emotion that you should think about is, where are you getting information from, and how much information are you getting? One of the major issues that we're seeing in the conversations that we're having with a lot of responders around wellness is this inundation of information and not being able to tell what's valid and what isn't. The reality is that a lot of what's being shared on social media isn't accurate. It's opinion versus fact. Even some of the things that are being presented as fact by normally credible sources aren't being properly vetted or properly shared. It's all about statistics and how we can change the statistics to sell advertising. Remember that that's what the news media's role is. Remember, social media is all about people sharing opinions and having ideas. It doesn't mean that they're valid, vetted information. So before you have a reaction to something, you really need to spend some time thinking about how valid is the source of the information before you believe it, and certainly before you share it. I think we have an obligation, especially as first responders. When we share something, people look at it as potentially more credible or more reliable. If we're not sure, then we really shouldn't be sharing it. The other piece of that is we need to make some space away from social media and away from the news. Whether that's at the end of the day, blocking out anything past 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, not paying attention to what's going out there, finding some space for yourself, whether it's sitting quietly and that idea of meditating or being mindful, or maybe it's to take up reading. If you haven't read in a long time or you are not an avid reader, this might be a great time to pick up a book or two and start reading that book just to get your mind off of the constant news cycle and all the information that's out there. So we've talked a lot about some different things that you can do in order to manage some of that stress, manage some of that fear, manage some of that anxiety. It's not going to go away, but there are definitely some things that we can do to help mitigate or manage those things. I'd like you to think about that list that you made early on, and you wrote down those 2 or 3 things that you had some fear or some anxiety about. And now that we've talked about some ideas to manage them, go back to that list for just a second. I'd like you to write down 2 or 3 strategies. It might be things that we talked about. Maybe as I was talking, something else came to your mind about a way to better manage some of those emotions and those feelings, go back to that piece of paper, write down two or three of them that you're going to try and implement as fast as right now or first thing tomorrow morning as you try to help yourself handle your wellness. So there's definitely some things that you can do to help manage the anxiety and the stress and the uncertainty and the other things that are going to keep popping up as we figure out as a nation really how to best deal with this COVID-19 and how you as an individual for your agency and as a member of a family need to continue dealing with this and how to move forward in the best, most healthy way possible. One of the things that we need to talk about is this idea of resilience. Responders, first responders, are incredibly resilient people. I used the story or the discussion about those retirees that have been through pretty significant events. The reality is, each of us, as we look back over our lives, have been through events that are incredibly significant and really difficult to handle. It might have been a call that you were on. It might have been something personal. It might have been both. I've handled as a former police officer, retired as a deputy police chief, handled my share of just awful incidents that I've had to deal with and work through in my own head. And the story that I share most frequently when I'm doing leadership development training is around what happened to me after I retired. So in 2017, in May, I actually retired after almost 28 years at the agency that I was at. And about 3 weeks after I retired, I was in Washington, D.C., teaching a class for the National Center for Biomedical Research and Training, and lost my vision in my left eye. It was a really bizarre set of events. I had this idea of what retirement was going to look like. I was going to play some golf, go out for runs, have a great time. I was out teaching that class and suddenly couldn't see out of my left eye. I wasn't sure if I was having a stroke or what was going on. Couldn't finish a sentence. Those of you that haven't experienced an acutely detached retina, I hope you never have to. I won't bore you with how awful the surgery is. You can look it up if you really want, but to rebuild a completely detached retina is a horrific surgery. So I was at home for quite some time. I was actually supposed to be at home for 3 months, not being able to travel while I was recovering from that retinal detachment surgery. About 4 weeks after I had that surgery, 4th of July in 2017, was sitting at home. My wife and kids were up at family property up in Wisconsin with our in-laws, and well, I'll never forget it. I thought I knew what resilience was like. I thought I knew what it was like to live through really difficult things. I was dealing with the eye thing, and the phone rang, and my wife was on the other end and said, "Hey, you need to get up here. Mark just died." Mark is my brother-in-law, and 54 years old, pastored our church, family man, one of the best human beings I've ever met. Died of a heart attack while he was out canoeing with his wife. And man, to have my wife and my kids there, thinking that I understood what resilience was before that, I truly had no idea how difficult life was going to be. But the reality is that, I lived through that. I survived through that. I'm a different person today than I was before that happened. Certainly after this COVID-19 outbreak and this pandemic response, we're all going to be different people than we were before we walked into this. So regardless of what it is that you're facing, there are people out there facing things that are as difficult and as challenging and maybe even more difficult and more challenging than what it is that you're facing. And you think about that for just a second, and how do we grow through some of these most significant events that we face, like this COVID-19 outbreak? I was on a webinar this morning, and it was a leadership development webinar, and the consultant who was speaking made a really, what I thought, important point. And he said, no one's going to be the same tomorrow as they were today or the day before. Everyone's either going to be better, he was specifically speaking as a leader or in leadership, they're going to be a better leader than they were yesterday, or they're going to be a worse and weaker leader. And I actually thought about that from a wellness standpoint, a responder wellness standpoint. The reality is none of us are going to be the same tomorrow as we were today as we deal with this. The reality is we get to, in some ways, choose, do we want to use this as a launch pad? Do we want to be better tomorrow and more well and healthier and more resilient tomorrow? Or are we going to be weaker because of it? Some of that choice is ours. Some of that choice may be how we connect with others and how we ask for help. Yep, I said it. It's okay to ask for help. It's good to ask for help. If you find yourself struggling and you just need something, there's plenty of places that you can reach out for help, and I would encourage you to think about that. Your life matters. We need you in this fight. If we're going to be successful working through this COVID-19 outbreak, if we're going to be successful as responders, we need you here in the fight with us. So if you're having any significant issues, reach out, ask for help. Specifically, the suicide hotline. If you have that feeling or a feeling like it's not going to get any better, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline can be reached at 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. It's okay to ask for help, and you should do that. There's some other really good resources out there in figuring out how to deal with and how to manage some of the stresses and the anxieties and the things that you're going through. Lots of good resources and lots of help. We'll post some of them on the page related to this webinar. And in the meantime, I just want to encourage you to be healthy, make good decisions, focus on wellness for yourself, for your family, and for your fellow responders. Connect with one another. Make sure that everyone's as okay as they can be, realizing that it's going to be challenging, and it's okay that it's challenging. But we need you, and if there's anything that we can do for you, you can always reach out to Louisiana State University's National Center for Biomedical Research and Training. Thanks, and have a great day.